I left off at the word loss, and know that if you have lost a loved one due to suicide, please know that they are forgiven and that the Most High, the highest of the high, still loves them and considers the state of mind that they were in. So take comfort in that, my dear cousin. I do not believe it is the unpardonable sin like some preachers will preach that it is, who go to seminary school and receive a 105c3 code, and Satan masquerades as an angel of light. How much more so his ministers, minus stars. We live in a very sin-cursed world that is very deceived, even by our words that we speak, and the religions that we have been taught to believe in that only have half truths or partial truths. If you seek all religions, there's a truth in each one that will lead you into all truth like a puzzle. So with that said, I will move on to my Aunt Vivian, who lived a very tragic life. She died at 40 years of age, another loss that my grandmother and the whole family had. She was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and she was a domestic violence victim. One situation, she had a boyfriend that was killed right in front of her by his own mother. Another time, she was abducted and raped by 3 men and tied to a tree. Her son, my grandmother ended up taking when he was a baby, because while she was high and passed out or whatever, we don't know for sure, we went to visit her, was concerned about her, had not seen her in a while, and we found the baby in a dirty diaper, and he had cigarette burns on him. And it's sad what we saw, and we had to take them to the hospital. And my cousin and his mother almost died, and she was put in a mental institution for a while after that. My grandmother ended up taking custody of my cousin. My mother did as well for a while, and he was like a little brother to me, my little Sean, and we had to give him back because my mom's boyfriend Mickey was a jerk and he was abusive, and he wanted my mother to raise his 2 daughters and me, and he didn't want her to take care of Sean. It was very heartbreaking to me because I wanted a little brother, and I finally got one at almost 12, which I ended up losing because of my parents fighting. I will go more into my parents' marriage later. It's very sad because Brenda's children ended up being abused, and one of her sons ended up dying after she died. He was drowned to death, probably killed by his own father is what everyone thinks. And then what happened to Vivian's child, and what happened to my mom's children, me and my brother. Debbie's children ended up pretty tossed around, and she had a son that committed suicide because he didn't want to be like his father and grandfather. He said that was what he said in the suicide note. And so the sins of our parents, me and my cousins, affected us as children and as adults. I can remember when I was 5 years old, my Aunt Vivian was watching me, and we were walking around the neighborhood all day, and I was a child at the time. I didn't know that she was getting drugs. She had taken me to walk through this cemetery, and I remember it was really dark, and I had an eerie feeling walking through there, and I had saw these mausoleums, and I remember them saying Frankenstein and Wolfman Jack, and I said, Aunt Vivian, I thought that was just, fake names and scary movies. And I fell into a big ditch, and this bat came up over my head, and the wings of it just opened up huge, and it became a man with red eyes, and I screamed and ran, and she ran too, and we jumped the brick wall. And I was like, did what just happened really happen? And she was like, you can't tell anybody about this, ever. And I did end up telling my little cousins, because I would be like, go to the bathroom with me. I'm so scared that Dracula is going to be laying down in the bathtub. Now, recently, because of the tragic events that have happened since I've been an adult, I did some research on the name Dracula and found that Vlad Dracul was a real man, that he impaled his victims on upright stakes and publicly drank their blood. Anyone who stood against him or the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic faith, and found that the Roman Catholics were the ones that started the Christian faith, and they would persecute and kill anyone who stood against them. Now, supposedly, he was killed, Vlad Dracul, and his body was in a casket, and he came up missing, and there were crown jewels in his crown, and they were very similar to what's described by Lucifer's crown. So sad but true, the sins of our parents will pass down to the third and fourth generation. And I do believe in the scripture that says in Mark 9:42 that it's better for you to put a millstone around your neck and throw yourself into the deepest part of the sea rather than to harm a hair on a child's head. To kill yourself rather than to hurt a child. And I seriously believe that that's toward pedophiles, and that is a very disgraceful, disgusting sin, and I don't understand how anyone can hurt a child in that way, because I was a victim of sex abuse and I didn't grow up to be a pedophile. Why would you want to inflict pain on someone else that you experienced? When you're a child growing up and you act out a little bit with maybe other kids, that does happen, and that happened between me and my cousins, and I'm very ashamed of that. I was like only 9 and 10 years of age when this happened. When I became at the age of accountability and understood that this was wrong, and it is my understanding, according to the Jewish bar mitzvah law, that a child becomes accountable, woman at 12 and a boy at 13, because women mature faster than men. And so me acting out with my cousins, because we were all abused, we didn't do anything really serious or anything. It was more kissing or fondling or rubbing each other on, but we didn't penetrate each other or something, if that's what you're thinking. This happened because we had adults who showed us what it was like to have an orgasm, and we were touched by the adults that were perverts in our lives. So we acted out a little bit with each other, and I remember I saw a show, I think it was on 2020 or Different Strokes or something. I think it was a combination of both, where they were talking about sex abuse, and I realized that I was a victim of sex abuse, and I cried to my mother and I told her, and there was a big fight between my parents. It became a nightmare. I almost regretted that I had ever even told, because nothing good ever came out of it, and it was probably because my father was intending on doing stuff to me himself, and he wanted me to be trained to keep my mouth shut about such things. My dad did in fact end up fondling me, saying things about me when I was growing, kissing me on my neck. So I just beg everyone out there, please do not abuse a child. Seek help if you think that way, because if you have been a victim of it yourself, and then you are now older and you're thinking like that, please seek help. It really, I understand why the scriptures say it's better for you to commit suicide than to do something like that, because the righteous creator is going to judge you harshly for doing such a thing like that to a child. And also, you know, your own mind and guilt, it's going to catch up to you, and it's either going to make you or break you. And I believe that the tax-paying citizens should not pay for pedophiles, these perpetrators who hurt innocent children, to be incarcerated. I believe that they should be took care of right away. I believe in the Old Testament Aramaic Hebrew laws that they still stand, and to represent the 12 tribes, a man that does such a thing is supposed to be severed in 12 ways and their body rid of, because, like, burned, and I've studied this, because that is a very awful demon, and it has to be severed from the earth and from society. It's a very unclean spirit. Someone that is perverted and demented and narcissistic and evil in their actions like that, they need to suffer the consequences of that. And I believe my resolution for this is, and it meets every side of the equation, and it meets the Old Testament law standards, is that, and knowing that the recidivism rate of a rapist is very high, because they need to be sent straight to the Most High for judgment. That's my informed opinion, and I've done a lot of research on this, because it really hurt me what my spouse did to my daughter, what was done to me as a child. It hurt me that my children fell victim to this as well as my brother and other cousins. I believe immediate judgment needs to take place, that person should be given time to repent and confess, and that then they should be executed, that type of evil needs to be cut off from the earth, from the world. It is someone who does something like that, they have studied their minds, science and doctors, and their brains are different than other people. They have something different in their brain than normal people who would not commit something like that. And what that stems from, I don't know. If it's a type of damage, if it's a demonic thing, it could be a combination of both. I just know that it needs to be cut off from the land. And if you make an example of one pedophile and that you can stop this sin from continuing, that if other men and women who think of a child in that way see that it's being handled in a very harsh, firm way, that it might prevent them from doing something like that. It might cause them to go get help rather than committing that act. So I just feel like, don't you dare mess with a child. It is one thing that I am very strongly against. The night that I shot and killed my second belated husband, David Lubin, I will brief you on what happened. He and I had been arguing throughout the day. He had smashed an ice cream in my face. They had taken my kids 2 weeks prior because of the domestic violence in the home. And there was an EPO on him, and he should have been taken. Long story short, when I came back from going to get cigarettes with my mother that night, he was blasting the stereo, and he was playing a song that said, I effed a sheep, I effed a goat, so what, so what, so what? I want to F my mother, my daughter, my brother, my sister, da da da. It was about incest and bestiality. He kept playing this. I was shocked when I heard it. I was trying to do laundry and I was like, get that off, get that out of my house. What is this? Get out of here with that. I'll kick you out, you know. I had just paid the rent and the bills. He hadn't given me anything either. He had gotten fired 3 days before and he was being very hostile to me for days. He played that song and he wouldn't turn it off. I tried to get it out of the stereo. He pushed me away. He ended up playing another song that said, I got a gun, get a gun, get a gun. And oh, by the way, he said that was like, where did you get such disgusting music? And he said it was a song by Metallica that never made it publicly. And I assume he got it when he was in his drug dealing days. He did have a 14-page rap sheet. He did have a pretty promiscuous life in his drug dealing days. And I believe that he couldn't handle just having normal sex, and that's why he was looking at our daughter not that way. He tried to get me to do a menage a trois. He tried to get me to watch pornography and have sex. He was trying to get me involved in all types of immoral sexual things that I was not going to do and I would never do. I've always had very strong morals when it comes, you know, to my sexuality. I've never practiced any kind of lesbianism. I've always just been strictly dickly. Excuse my French if that's, you know, but I've always just been with a man. Have I went through some promiscuousness in my life? I have slept with many people, quite a few people, about 40 people in my lifetime. I'm not going to lie. But it's only been a man, and it's only been one man, one night at a time. I've never had a threesome. And so I strongly am against all types of sexual immorality. I do believe that judgment is coming. I am ashamed of my promiscuity in life. I do believe that he meant us to have one spouse, one man, one husband for the rest of our life. And I'm very varicose, blessed that I've never gotten a sexually transmitted disease like, you know, AIDS or anything like that. Although I have heard that Rh negatives cannot be cloned and they fight off those type of infections. And I don't know if that's why when my husband cheated on me, John, the one I was with for 14 years, and I contracted HPV from him cheating on me, if that's why my body got rid of it and I didn't end up with cervical cancer. But that is what destroyed our marriage, my 14-year marriage, the father of my 4 sons. I did have 6 children altogether, like I said. So my oldest, Adrian, is from my high school sweetheart, and my last child, my daughter, was from David, the one that I killed. And they did put her in sex abuse counseling at UK Psychiatry after I killed him and after I got out of jail, and we were having some therapy as a family because I was on HIP. And it took 2 years before they sentenced me. And she worked out with dolls what her father did. And I was told by the therapist who was seeing all of us what happened. I was not allowed to talk about it with her. During our visits, we were not allowed to talk about anything because my case was still up for investigation. But I am strongly against sexual abuse, and that's why when my spouse, belated spouse David, was playing this music, I was shocked. I had always told David that if anyone had ever sexually abused my children, I would kill him. That the only reason why I hadn't done anything about my sons was because they were abused by young, small children themselves, not adults. An adult is a whole different story. So Again, I'm not going to act all high and mighty and like I'm better than anybody else, but I do have my morals, and I have only went so far in sin as far as sin goes in my life. I am ashamed to say that I do think I possibly, most likely, realistically did sleep with the enemy, the devil. My last husband was very evil and demonic and possessed, and or Satan himself. He claimed to be Satan, and one of the reasons why I wrote and published this book was to expose that, because it is my job and my duty as a person who fears the righteous Creator to expose all truth. And he said to expose them, to bring to the light what's been done in the darkness. And so it is my duty to reveal that Donald Keith Hester II, born September 1st, 1975, claims to be Satan. And he is a very tall, handsome, good-looking man. And it's very possible, and I do have recordings of him saying that he caused the 911 attacks and he's going to cause nuclear war. And I was with this man after I had killed David, and he would drive me crazy. I will go more into that later. If I'm wrong about this man being the devil, may the Most High forgive me. But as a man speaketh, so shall he be. And he did claim these claims on himself to be the son of perdition. So, believe me, it's a very degrading, awful, devastating thing to me to divulge this information and to believe that it could be true, that I had been with someone sexually who is unclean and very filled with evil, and I have suffered a terrible, terrible affliction in my body since I was with him. I have done some studying on what they call the pineal gland sacrifice, and it may be similar to something like that I'm suffering. I know that Genesis 3:15 says that the seed of the woman will crush the enemy's head. So I have had like a crushing head type of thing, and I have had power get released out of my mind. You can think I'm crazy all you want to, but this is the truth. And I'm not lying. I have no reason to lie. I'm trying to do everything I can to save my soul and to save the souls of other human beings walking the face of this earth. I have no reason to lie. I have every reason to tell the truth, because my soul, I believe, has been at stake. I'm trying to sever all soul ties with Satan, with the enemy, with any type of contracts or anything in this world that has been done to me that I don't understand, that has been done in a spiritual or physical realm. Because I have found out that there are a lot of illegal, fraudulent laws and type of papers that they try to get us to sign or be a part of, and it is to kind of put you in bondage or to take your soul if they can. The enemy, Satan, the Illuminati, the elite, the Vatican. Supposedly Satan holds our soul in the Vatican. So in my research, these are the truths that I'm finding, and I'm just revealing this in my book to try and help other people. I don't want anyone else to suffer what I have. It's been very, very painful. It happens to me a lot. I hide it. See, it's happening now. And I believe it could be part of the overcoming, the mark of the beast, like the scriptures talk about in Revelations 12, when it says they overcame his name, number, and image. And it talks about the woman casting down the enemy, which means to expose him, like a cast in a movie, which I have done in my last book and in my other videos. I show him and what he looks like, and I have videos recorded of him that he didn't know I was making, where he does talk about the evils that he's done and how much he hates his family, and he says murderous things. And so it's up to you. You have to decipher for yourself. I'm just here to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, no matter how degrading it is to me. I have to die to my pride to expose this. I mean, I don't want my daughter even to know that this is possible, that her own mother might have slept with the devil. But I've had to tell her and my sons to warn them and prevent them from making the mistake that I have. Any sins that I have, that these types of entities can come our way, whether it's fallen angels, demonic beings, a devil, a Satan. We have to be careful who we entertain and who we allow to touch our bodies and be with us, because all other sin is outside of the body. Sexual sin is a sin against the spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. You really need to be careful who you join your body with, so that you're not unequally yoked. Because believe me, this has caused a great thorn in my side and a very terrible affliction for almost 8 years now. We can't let pride, fear, or the devil stand in our way of doing what's right, because we are all going to stand accountable before the Most High, the highest of the high, the great I am, my call, HaKodesh, one day. It's been very hard for me to recollect my whole life because of the brain damage that I have from being in the prison for 3.5 years, the abuse I suffered in there, the poor diet, the fasting, because I was going through spiritual warfare. I fasted a total of 64 days, one time for 10 days, another for 15 days. Several times I did this, and the trauma in my psyche from this affliction, because I'm like forcing out, this affliction. It's affected me. They put me on medications when I was in there. And I have been through a lot since I've gotten out, with my sons, with my children, dealing with them and their problems in the aftermath of their brother passing away. And now I have a new grandson, and our hands are full with him, and that's kind of slowed me down in the editing and publishing of this book, especially in a more professional way, plus my financial situation. I am very concerned for my family's welfare, and I want things to improve for them. I want them to stop struggling financially. I want them to heal. I don't like the sin that my children are in, but I have to hope that they will get to where they need to be spiritually. They're not doing really, really bad, but they're not doing as good as they could be. And I believe that that's from the separation. Those years that I missed out on raising them, they did not have their strict mama raising them. Because I always knew where my children were, what they were doing, and who they were with. And I was strict on my children. They didn't just run the streets and do whatever they wanted to do, like Zach was doing with this woman from the foster home, adoptive home, and out of her neglect, he ends up dying and getting killed. I'm very hurt, and I've had to forgive this woman, but it's still wrong, and I do believe that I should have my daughter back already by now. Unfortunately, sometimes our children are stubborn and they think that we don't know best because of the mistakes that we've made, and they judge us by it. I did the same thing with my parents, but it's us parents who have been around and they're done that are wiser because of what we've been through and are able to give very good advice. It takes time for them, I guess, to realize that. Let's just put it this way. When you've been through what I've been through, you know a snake in the grass when you see one. You try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Some people will try to pull wool over your eyes, but you can still usually see, and sometimes you learn the hard way that you should have followed your instincts and intuitions on someone, because by being nice and trying to give the benefit of the doubt, your instincts usually end up right and people end up usually trying to screw you over. I try not to judge and be too harsh and condemn anyone though. I love people and His creation. I love the Most High's creation. I've been involved with all walks of life and all races. And, I grew up in the streets of Chicago. I've been exposed to gangs. But familiar spirits, when you have sinned in certain ways and you've gotten that sin out of your life, you can just sense spirits that were from the enemy and that are in other people that you're around. And you try to ward that off from yourself. You know how to read people because you've studied people and observed and dealt with different walks of life, low and high, all different types. But in spite of that, I humbly give people the right to try and change and be a better person, hoping that they've learned from their mistakes. But I do go by the old saying that if you crap on me once, shame on me, or shame on you. If you crap on me twice, shame on me. So if I give you the chance and forgive you and you do it again, it's going to ruin the trust. I'm not going to trust you the same. Usually if someone will hurt you one time, they'll hurt you twice, and then again and again and again. I've found that out the hard way. Let's just put it this way. I've been very used in life. My weakness has been my kindness, and some people will mistake your kindness as weakness and seriously try to take advantage of you. And I have been took advantage of by people. I've spent my money on them, buying them things they need, helping them pay bills. I went out of my way to help a lot of family, friends, and loved ones. And it's been rough for me since I've gotten out of prison. It's been very hard for me to get on my feet because I've been doing everything I can to help my children and rehabilitate them and restore my relationship with them. And I have went through like all of my funds that I had when I got out of prison. I had over $10,000 and I spent it all on my children and getting places to live for me and my son. And they were very tore down though from everything that happened. So I've done what I can to rebuild them and rebuild our relationship. And there has been a lot of drama from the wounds of the past. I've suffered my children being very angry with me and blaming me. I've went through a lot with them since I've gotten out in the last 4.5 years. It has been very mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually exhausting, to say the least, trying to heal and mend and reconcile my relationship with my children from that 5-year separation, from my incarceration, and the 2 years before I was incarcerated, and I didn't get to see them but about once every 2 weeks. It is my deep felt, heartfelt prayer and call out to Allah to heal my children and to mend them and to save them. I lift them up to Him and pray that He would deliver them from alcohol, from any type of marijuana use that they've struggled with, from bad influences, from smoking cigarettes, and from being in sexual relationships that are sinful because they're not married. I have struggled with my children and teaching them that they need to get out of sin and to do what's right, and I can only hope and pray that my children will get out of sin and that my daughter will not dabble with these things without me being with her to supervise her and train her in righteousness. I do worry, or I am concerned for her, and I would love to get her back. That is one of the main goals of my book. I'm hoping to soon get my daughter back, and I believe that she should be with Mommy. So again, this book is more condensed and it doesn't have as much detail as my other book. I just want to give the gist of everything as far as childhood and my family's history. So my dear Aunt Vivian passed away at 40 years of age. They found her passed away in her bed. I think it was from COPD. She was on an oxygen tank, and my mother and grandmother found her passed away. It was very sad. Now I'm going to go on with about my mom. She was the second oldest, and my mother was beautiful. She looked kind of like Victoria Principal or Cher, or like Marlo Brandon from That Girl, the show. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it when you were younger. It's from many, many years ago. She had beautiful thick black hair and big, vibrant brown eyes. She was petite and tiny figured. My dear sweet mom, whom I love and miss so very much, she truly was my best friend, even though she failed a lot because of her brokenness. When her parents split up due to her father's mental illness and inability to accept his imperfect son with my grandma, my mother and her siblings suffered greatly from my grandma's shortcomings. My grandma was drinking, and she had been with a lot of different boyfriends who abused her and abused her children, and some of them sexually abused my mom. And I remember my mother telling me my grandma had beat her up with a broomstick one time when she revealed that her boyfriend had in fact abused her sexually. My grandmother didn't believe it. One of the men my grandmother was with ended up cutting her everywhere, over 50 times, all over her body, and scarred her for life. Her hair turned white as snow from shock when he attacked her. At 10 years of age, my mom was babysitting, so she would have money for food and clothes, because when my grandmother did leave my grandfather with $5 in her pocket and 7 children, believe me, they did struggle financially. My mom at 12 started working in a restaurant called Eva's on Leland Avenue in Chicago, she said, and that's where she met my father. and they started dating, and it was on their third date that my father took my mother's virginity. He raped her, and she ended up getting pregnant with my brother Stevie, who died 6 hours after he was born, supposedly. And my parents were shocked, because my dad said he did have a good set of lungs. They said that his lungs weren't fully developed. And my grandmother pushed my mother down a flight of stairs, and that's what sent her into the hospital. My mom often told me that her and my dad would sing and dance, and he would dress like Elvis Presley and could, act like Elvis and sing like him, that he was like the king of rock and roll and he stole her heart. She told me that they would dress alike and that they would put streaks in their hair and both wear the same outfits. And my dad came to Chicago when he met my mom, leaving Kentucky and coming to Chicago. He was an industrial maintenance mechanic. He was only 15 when he moved here and left home. His family was all from Kentucky, from the South. He came from a home some might say was a little abnormal. My paternal grandparents, I love them both very much. They're very old-fashioned and have lived here in the South most of their life, except for when they were in Kentucky and worked in factories. There are some strange things that happen in my father's family that I will relate to briefly soon. I do love my dad's family. My grandparents were married for over 70 years, but I do have differences with my father's side of the family, which I will relate to more when I go more into my childhood. I do know that my grandfather, who is now passed away, was a World War II veteran, and that might have been why he was a very silent man and a little messed up, and from what I was told, abusive to his 4 sons. My father claimed that his parents were very strict and old-fashioned and hard-working people that were brought up on farms, and that they were fearing of the Most High but lacked in generosity and love. My dad, when he was little, they worked in factories and made plenty of money. They had 4 sons, and he said they wouldn't spend a dime on them, that he would see lots of money in the drawers and they would not buy him or his brothers a bicycle, that he had ended up breaking, I think he said his ankle or leg or something, using a shopping cart for kicks to go up and down the hills by the apartment where they lived in Cincinnati when their parents worked in factories. He said that they were not affectionate. They were never shown any love. They were just told to clean and cook and do their chores. He said that his dad beat the crap out of him when he stole acne cream from the store at 13 because his father wouldn't even give him $1 to buy it. So my father stole it. He said that they never received presents on birthdays or Christmas. They were blessed to get a piece of fruit on the holidays, and that his parents were cheapskates and very miserly. I remember one time him telling me a story about how he found his father in a bar talking to another woman, and he blackmailed his dad. And his dad bought him the bike he wanted, and my grandmother figured it out. She pumped the truth out of my father, and she ended up beating the crap out of my dad and my grandpa with a frying pan, and she made my dad bring the bike back. My father said that because of the abuse and they were never told I love you, that that's why he left when he was 15. I believe that her sons all joined the army to get away from home, because all of my uncles did join the army, everyone but my father, who had left at 15 and went to mechanical school to become an industrial maintenance mechanic. Two of his brothers ended up dying from hepatitis, and I can remember being told that they were able to buy women for $10 when they were in the army. And my father told me that they did a lot of drugs when they were in there, as well as my uncles did divulge some information like that to me. I feel sorry for all of them. I know that they probably did those things because of they were damaged inside from their childhood. My dad passed away at only 55. He lived a very short life, and the pain of it, him not receiving the love and attention and affection and encouragement that he needed from his parents. And I witnessed it myself as I got older. I saw the bitterness and resentment, and it made war in and amongst the family from years of unresolved, unforgiven judgment and criticism. My dad's childhood made him abuse me and my mother, and I know that. To proceed, my mother used to tell me stories of how in love she was with my father. They would go dancing and dress alike, wearing the same type of clothing, like I said. At 15, the pregnancy, when she lost my baby brother Stevie, my father believes that because it was a Catholic hospital and that the baby was born out of wedlock, that they killed my brother. I'm not sure how true that is. And or that they switched him and put him up for adoption. So I don't know, I could even have a brother that I never met running around somewhere. It would have been nice to have an older brother. I believe that he would have protected my mom and I when my parents fought, and me myself when I got older with my abusive husbands. My mom said she got married with my father in January of 1968 in a polka dot dress, and I was born a year later on their anniversary. The problems started to occur right away after they were married. My father became very unfaithful to my mom, and that I will never understand because she was a very beautiful woman. And I do remember my father telling me before he died that if there was a harem of 100 beautiful women standing in front of him, he would have never cheated on my mom had he known what he knew then. That he really messed up when it came to my mother. That he realized after losing her what a good, beautiful woman she really was. My mother was a very beautiful woman. She kept a spotless house. She worked as a secretary and made very good money. I never understood why my father beat her and abused her. I know that they ended up separating when I was 3.5 years of age because he had beat her so severely one time after cheating on her and them getting in a fight about it, that my mother's in-laws, her brother-in-laws, and my grandmother's boyfriends, they all jumped him and supposedly beat him with a baseball bat and told him to get out of Chicago and never come back. And I don't remember the first 5 years of my childhood. My first memory is when I was around five, I believe. I was sitting in a sunroom of an apartment that we had, I believe, on Bosworth in Chicago. It was in the North Rogers Park area. And I remember playing with a Ken doll and a little Barbie doll, and I had a little pink Corvette. And I was just sitting there pretending, that me and Ken were going on a ride. And that's my first memory. And I believe that the reason why I blocked out the first 5 years of my childhood is because of the abuse that I might have seen or experienced. Supposedly they almost killed my father when they beat him, and he did come and kidnap me after this, and that was his way of getting my mom to go back to him, which she did do temporarily. But once she got me back, she then left him again. She tricked him, she said, because she said that when she was in Kentucky trying to get me back from my father, that my grandmother in fact told my father to beat my mother with a broom. And there was a lot of extreme drama and violence or whatever, from what I recollect, that happened. And so my mother fled with me, and she divorced my dad. It just goes to show, though, that my parents did have a very rocky relationship, because I can remember them one time telling me that they forgot me in an apartment when I was about 6 months to a year old, that they realized when they had moved out of an apartment, they were driving away, and they were like, "Where's the baby? Do you know where the baby is?" Another story that they told me is when they were fighting, when they had kidnapped me, I had gotten away and was found in a German Shepherd's doghouse with some puppies over a mile away from home. Had even crossed train tracks. I was told a lot of crazy stories about my parents' fights. One time my mother tried to stab my father with an ice pick and run him over with a car when she found out that he cheated on her with a girl named Sheila in Kentucky. So they ended up splitting up by the time I was 3.5, 4 years of age because of all of their fighting. And after they separated, my mom went to college to become a secretary. Her mom watched me and took care of me. And my Uncle Bobby and Aunt Vivian lived with my Grandma Fronia at the time. And this is when I can recall memories of being dressed like an angel with a halo on my head for Halloween that was made out of aluminum foil. And my grandma taking me with her and Tuffy, her boyfriend at the time, who had a big belly, to wrestling matches, and he would get me and my cousins ice cream. Remember, it was very violent and bloody, but I did see some of that at home when the adults would fight and get drunk. And her boyfriends would often beat up her daughter's boyfriends, who had beaten up her daughters. So my grandma and my mom said that when I was little, they nicknamed me Little Miss Priss and Boo Boo, and I do vaguely remember being called that. They told me a story that when I was little, we went to a theater, and I do vaguely remember this, that I stood up in front of the whole theater and said, "Ethel, put back on your clothes," to the movie Billy Jack. And I still remember the song from that movie. Because go ahead and hate your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend, do it in the name of heaven, you can justify it in the end. There won't be no trumpets blowing on the judgment day, on the bloody morning after. One tin soldier rides away, and they whistle. That's what I remember of the song. And my grandma said that the whole theater just laughed when I said that. they'll put back on your clothes. She'd also tell the story. My grandmother had a habit of telling stories about her granddaughters to everybody, and especially me for some reason. I do believe she favored me a lot when I was a little girl. I was her first grandchild. I'm talking about my maternal grandmother from you. She said that she had went into my room one day and smelled something awful, and after searching she found fruit and snacks hidden, rotting in my dresser drawers. And when she came to ask me about it, why I would do such a thing, that I said to her, "Grandma, I'm saving for the Great Depression. I always hear you guys talk about how people had no food at that time, and I don't want that happening to our family, and I don't want any of us starving to death." She said that she laughed and said, "My dear sweet granddaughter, you can't store food that will spoil, only canned goods." And I, in my innocence, not knowing, I hugged her, and she said that I was her little Joseph. I think she said, little Joseph, saving for the 7 years of famine. I can remember going to a few Catholic masses, all dressed up for Easter, dipping my hand in the water, the holy water, they call it the Kodesh water, and amazed at the great cathedrals and the robes of the priests and the stained glass windows. And my grandmother and Aunt Cindy were in the Catholic faith, and it wasn't until my father and mother reconciled when I was 7.5 that I was taken by my fraternal grandmother to church at a Baptist church, and had learned more about salvation and the cross, and about Jesus. I had some little bit of experience about it with my grandma from ya and my aunts and my mother, but not much. They weren't very religious. Cindy was more so. She was one to go to Catholic Mass more so than the other family members. And now knowing what I know, that there is paganism in all religion, and that Jesus means Zeus, it is the name of a pagan god, I realized that I was raised to believe a lie. And so my mother ends up involved with a man named Mickey, who had a glass eye and was in the Vietnam War. And he was a very scary, mean man. My mom made a very big mistake in ever involving herself with him. In spite of it all, she did survive Mickey's abuse. I believe she was with him for 2 years. And I had only ended up having one visit from my father that I can remember when I was about 5.5, 6 years of age. He had came to my grandma's house with his new wife Dora, and I remember him donning a long beige trench coat, and he showed up saying that he was my father. And I just thought, who are you? Where have you been if you're my dad? And who's this woman on your arm with this long hair? And she was nowhere near as beautiful as my mother. And he was asking me to leave with him and go with him. And his piercing bluish green, like turquoise eyes were just icy and chilling to me, but yet curious. And I was just puzzled how, he appealed to me to let him take possession of me and accompany him back with his wife to Kentucky. Just bear in mind, I didn't know him and had not known much of him, just that him and my mom had broke up, and I had seen some crazy abuse by them in the family. So I trusted my mom, to be with my mom or my grandmother. My father was a stranger to me. So I chose to stay with my mom, and I don't think my mom would have let him take me anyways. I do remember that I was very scared of my mother's boyfriend, Mickey, though. He put my mother's face over a fire and tried to burn her face. He burned her IDs up. He was very, very mentally ill, very abusive. He had done things to his daughters and I that were abusive, and his daughters believed that he had in fact killed their mother. He claims that she accidentally fell out of a window, but I believe after the abuse I saw that he actually pushed her out the window. Talk to you later. I will do in the next video soon.